Hey guys, it's Rosa here. I hope you're all having a lovely day. Today I'm going to be filming another sew along tutorial for you. I recently made a Tilly and the Buttons Francoise dress and I absolutely love it. I use this amazing vintage fabric. It's an old vanishing fabric, but it works really well for this dress. So if you've got this pattern or if you're thinking of buying it, just looking for some tips for sewing your own 60s shift dress, then do keep watching. So the first thing you're going to need to do is cut out the front of your dress, and here you can see I've already pinned the darts in, and you're also going to need to cut out the back of your dress. And before I started working on my dress, I needed to make sure that I did stay stitching all around the neckline, just to make sure it didn't stretch out. I also cut out the two little shoulder pieces that you can see here, and the front and back facings. I've also chosen to include the little front tab with the little covered buttons, which I'll show you how to make as well. Of course, if you don't want to include this, you don't have to. So as you saw before, I've already pinned my darts in, and the first thing I'm going to do is go right to my sewing machine and sew them all up. There are 2 back darts in this dress to give it shape at the back, and there are 4 darts in the front, including 2 really long ones, which go up from the hip to the bust. And this seems like quite a lot of darts, but actually once I finished the dress I really appreciated them. They give it a really nice shape. The correct way to finish the ends of your darts, the points of your darts, is instead of back stitching on your machine, take the 2 ends and simply knot them together, and this should give you a really smooth point on your dart. The next thing I like to do is just set out all the pieces so I'm ready to go, just so I can kind of get my head around where they all go, particularly as the shoulder pieces are a little bit, not confusing, but you might not necessarily automatically know where they go, because they create a really interesting shape. So I pin these all together, and once I've done that, I'll go to my sewing machine and just sew them all along as straight seams. So you can see the first seam that I'm pinning here is the little shoulder piece, and I'm pinning it to the dress front. Once I've done that, I'm going to pin together the 2 shoulder pieces at the shoulder seam. Once I've pinned the front and the back shoulder pieces together, I'm going to do the last bit, which is pinning on the back. So the back of the dress onto that back shoulder piece. Once you've pinned up all those pieces together, it should look a little bit like this. So now that I've pinned up all of those seams, I'm going to go right ahead to the sewing machine and stitch them all up using a straight stitch, and I'll finish them all off with a zigzag stitch, or you could use an overlocker just to prevent any fraying. The reason I like to pin all my pieces at once and not pin one and then go to the machine and then come back and pin another, I just find it really cuts down the sewing time. It makes you much more efficient, and I quite like that. Next, it's time to finish our raw edges on the armholes. So I've just cut a piece of white bias tape here because I thought it would be the best colour to use, and I've pinned it all along the length of the armhole. The armhole is still a straight line. I haven't joined it at the underarm seam, so this makes it a little bit easier. Now I'm going right to my sewing machine and stitching in that crease line in the bias tape and attaching the bias tape all the way around the armhole opening. It's important to note here that I've left about 1 inch or so of bias tape at the beginning and at the end, just sort of sticking out to give me some room when I'm attaching them together. Once you've attached your bias tape, it's time to pin up your side seams. And when I'm pinning up the side seams of my dress, I also do this on the underarm, so I pin the sides of the bias tape together, which means that I close that loop. Now lots of people will attach their bias tape on the bias, so they'll cut it on a diagonal, but I find that it works just fine if I just sew it along here for an armhole facing. So you can just see here where I've pinned together the bias tape, and I'm going to go right ahead on my sewing machine and sew straight down that side seam, including, like I said, the underarm seam on the bias tape. Now I'm going to go back to my armholes. I'm going to just trim off any excess fabric from that armhole, which sticks out further than the edge of the bias tape does. And I'm going to go all the way around and clip the curves. Now the whole thing is a curve, so I'm going to basically clip all the way around the armhole to make sure it lies nice and flat. Now I'm just turning that bias tape onto the inside of the dress to cover up all of that raw edge, so it's really, really neat and tidy. I'm going to pin all the way around. Now it's completely up to you how you like to finish this off. I choose to do this by hand, but you could do it on the sewing machine. Again, it's completely up to you. When I sew this bias tape down by hand, I just use a really simple slip stitch, so it doesn't take too long at all. It's a pretty quick process. So now we're ready to insert our invisible zip. What I do first of all is pin it all the way down the left hand side, because I find the left hand side easier to sew on for some reason. And then I just use a regular sewing foot, but you can get special feet for your sewing machine, which you can attach for invisible zippers. I just find it's easier to just roll it open with my fingers as I go along and then just stitch in that ditch. Once you've attached the zip on that side, you just need to do exactly the same on the other. And there are no seams to match here, so it's a little bit easier than doing one with like a waist seam or something. It's an easier insertion. I'm really sorry guys, but I completely forgot to film me joining up the dress underneath the invisible zip. So once you've sewn the invisible zipper, it's really simple. You just need to pin up the rest of that back seam, that centre back seam, just underneath the zipper, and sew it up with a straight stitch. This is a really good time to finish all of your raw edges by either zigzagging or overlocking. Now I hem my dress on the sewing machine. Not everyone does this. Some people like to do it by hand. Again, it's completely up to you. Now it's time to prepare our facings. So as you can see here, I've got my front neck and back neck facing pieces, and I'm going to just iron some iron-on interfacing onto both of those. You can also see here the little tab front pattern piece, and I'm going to iron some interfacing onto that too while I'm at the ironing board. Once you've interfaced your pieces, it's time to pin them together at the shoulder seams. So you can see here I'm matching up the shoulder seams on the front and back facing pieces. Now you can take them to your sewing machine and simply sew along those edges. Once you've attached the front to the back of the neck facing, you can then very carefully, because it's a curved edge, do a really narrow hem all the way around. I just fold this over as I go, but if it's a bit tricky for you, then do just use a nice arm steam iron to turn the edge over, or use lots of pins, whatever's easiest for you. I also always attach my little handmade by Rosabella tag onto the facing, because then you won't see it from the outside, but obviously that's optional. Now with the right sides facing, I'm going to go right ahead and pin my neckline facing all the way around the neckline. You can see the stay stitching which I've done there, so make sure it's not stretched out during all of this work which we've been doing. I'm going to be sewing it over the top of the zip as well, so it will cover up the zip. And you'll see why in a sec. Once you've done that, you need to get your scissors out again and just clip that curve again, just like we did in the underarm seams. We need to clip the whole of the neckline because it's all really curved, to make sure it lies nice and flat. Once you've done that, you'll need to do your understitching, and this just means stitching your facing to the seam allowance, that little bit that you just clipped all around the curve. This makes sure that your facing stays on the inside of your dress. So you can see here I'm just sewing all the way along with a straight stitch. It's also called stitch in the ditch because you stitch really, really close to that ditch where the facing joins with the main dress. Just do a straight line of stitching along there, and I used to think this wouldn't work, and it really does. I don't really know how it works, but it does. It's really worth doing when you're using a facing to make sure it doesn't pop out and look a bit silly. Now I'm going to cover up the top of my zipper and make sure it looks really neat and tidy. So I'm going to just fold that facing over the top of the zip. Once I fold it over the top, I'm going to stitch straight down that edge there. Now that you've stitched that, you can clip the corner off, making sure you don't cut through your stitches and ruin your zipper. And then you can very carefully just pull it round to the right side so that the wrong sides are together. And it's just a really nice, neat way to finish your zipper at the top. Now it's time to make the last piece of our dress, which is a really cute little decorative tab on the front. So first of all, I'm going to pin the, you've got two pieces there for your tab. I'm going to pin them right sides together all the way around, and then it's a little bit tricky going around the corners because they're curved. Just go really slowly around the corners and leave a gap of about maybe an inch or two, probably about 2 inches, so you can turn the whole thing the right way around. Before I turn the whole thing the right way around, I'm just going to clip those corners. Lots of clipping of curves in this dress, lots of lovely curved lines. Again, just to make sure it sits really nicely. And here I am turning my little button tab the right way around, and it looks really cute. I just love these bold colours. It looks so cool with this sort of 60s design. Now, as you know, we left a little gap so that we could turn our button tab around, but we now need to close that up. So I'm just using a needle and thread, and I'm doing some really simple little slip stitches to close up the gap. Now, I have decided to make some really cute little covered buttons for my Francoise dress. So to do this, you just need to cut a circle about a couple of centimetres bigger than your buttons. Sometimes when you buy coverable buttons, they actually give you like a little template. These ones are just ones I got off the upper market actually, so I don't have one of those. But just cut one a couple of centimetres bigger, and then I'm going to do a really big running stitch by hand all the way around the circle. And when I pull these stitches, it will pull it all the way around the little button, as you can see, and I can just stitch that in place. And it has the back of the button, which you can just really gently press down to cover up all of those messy edges where you've gathered up the stitches, and then your button is ready to be sewn onto your dress. I decided to sew my little button tab on by hand, and of course we're going to have to sew these buttons on by hand. So the first thing I do is pin it on with lots of pins, and then go right on in with my needle and thread and attach them. And then, ta-da! The very cute 60s Francoise dress is finished. I hope you liked this tutorial, guys. I hope it was helpful for you or interesting. And I hope you have a go at this pattern because I absolutely love it. My mum gave me some really cute vintage fabric with some beautiful yellow flowers on, and I'm super tempted to make another one of these dresses because I've kind of been living in it since I finished it. I would say, just so everybody knows, that I have lengthened my dress a little bit. I think I lengthened it by about 2 inches because the pattern does come up pretty short, and I am quite short. I'm only 5'4", so if you are any taller than me, you'll probably find this is a little bit too short unless you're very daring and really like a little mini skirt. I think particularly to wear with bare legs in the summer, it's good to lengthen it a little bit. Unless you're super petite. Anyway guys, that is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please do give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and do click subscribe for new sewing vlogs and tutorials every week. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye!